Prince Aot, the son of King Daniel of Bashan, had gone up north of the Sea of Galilee to the slopes of the Lebanon Massif, to the mysterious city of the moon god, pursuing his vision of a mysterious moon maid, a princess of the moon sisters, the O.T.A, that he had seen in a vision. He and his two companions reached the Tower of Skulls. Inside, the moon maid climbed the stairs and got all the way up to the top. Aqhat chased her up the top of the stairs, just as a mighty eagle swooped down, grabbed her, and she was gone, vanished. Aqhat paced around the parapet, looking over each side to see if she had fallen. Oh, there was no sign of her anywhere. But then he heard the tinkling of her silver bells from high above. He looked up into the night sky to see a great bird of prey circling the tower, with the torn hem of her veil clutched in its talons. His love had been snatched from his grasp by Anath's winged demons. The bitch goddess had killed his dream. At least he would have revenge. Aqhat took the coiled rope from his belt and cast the bitter end down through the hole in the loft. "Tie my bow and quiver onto the rope," he shouted to his companions below. Quickly he hauled the god Kothor's mighty weapon and magic arrows up into his grasp. As he strained to string the bow, the eagle, still clutching its forlorn trophy, perched atop one of the four lofty horns that projected from the corners of the tower. Aqhat's gaze was fixed on his prey. He did not see the great flock of hawks swooping down out of the night sky behind him. Suddenly the birds of prey fell on him, clawing at his face, ripping his flesh with their beaks, forcing him to his knees with their beating wings. With a muffled scream, he dropped the bow and the quiver to fight off the ravening sky demons with his bloody hands. But now the great eagle, ridden by the dark spirit of Yatpan, winged down from his perch. The mighty werefalcon seized the harried prince by the shoulders and severed Aqhat's jugular vein with 3 slashes of his razor beak. King Daniel's only son gasped and choked in his own blood as the light of life faded from his eyes, and the smoke of his soul went out through his nostrils, and he realized too late how his passions had betrayed him. The murdering man-eagle grasped Aqhat's fallen bow and quiver in its talons and winged aloft, making way for a werebird of vastly greater size to descend upon the still bleeding corpse. Shumao, mother of eagles, began her gruesome work with beak and claw, not pausing until she had devoured every scrap of bloody flesh and every splinter of shattered bone. And as the she-eagle pecked up and swallowed down the last pitiful remains of Bashan's slain prince, the night air grew still and heavy, as if heaven held its breath until distant thunder rolled and dark clouds blotted out the stars. Down below, Prince Aqhat's two companions had finally summoned the courage to climb the narrow staircase. They emerged out of the loft just as the mother of eagles rose from her grisly feast and launched herself into the storm-black sky. The sight of this monster bird and the torn and bloody remnants of the prince's garb were mute testimony to the tragedy that had befallen their lord. With heavy hearts and fearful minds, they descended the 100 steps, down past galleries of grinning skulls that seemed to be laughing at some joke only the dead would find amusing. Well, 10 leagues to the south of Court-Ablim, that other great eagle, with a bow and quiver clutched at its talons, was flying through a gale. Far below him surged the dark waters of the Sea of Kinnereth. The great bird buffeted by the wind, struggled with all his strength to keep his course, but a blinding flash of lightning, a terrible crack of thunder, shocked him senseless. For an instant his claws released their grip. The bow, along with its magic arrows, fell into blackness, while the clouds rolled westward, carrying the precious rain beyond the parched fields of Bashan. In the royal bedchamber of the palace at Runyon, Queen Canaanite was tossing in throes of a nightmare. In her dream, she heard her baby son screaming. She hurried to his aid. As a flock of black ravens rose from his crib, trailing his glistening pink entrails from their beaks, she voiced a cry of anguish and sat bolt upright, wide awake and terrified. King Daniel, who had been slumbering beside his wife, roused himself on his elbow and shook the sleep from his eyes. "What's the matter?" he mumbled. "He's dead. My son is dead," Canaanite said in a hollow voice. "By what means? By whose hand?" "The birds and the birds." And the king's heart sank to hear this, for he knew that his wife had dreamed the omen he feared the most. Their daughter, Pugat, Aqhat's older sister, entered her parents' bedchamber with tear-streaked cheeks. "I heard you cry out, Mother. I, too, have had an awful dream in which I saw a vulture eating my poor brother's heart." At this the king rose and called for his servants to dress him for a journey. "We must go and search for him at first light." "It's too late," the queen murmured. "We must find enough of him to bury," her husband said in a voice that rasped like a wood saw from his throat. King Daniel and his daughter, Princess Pugat, set out at dawn to follow the trail of the prince and his companions. They dressed in humble fashion and rode donkeys, for they knew that once past the borders of Bashan, royal robes and a gilded chariot would be dangerous luxuries. Runyon lay 3 leagues south of the Jordan River's upper mouth, and all along this route Daniel was shocked to see the desolation that the blazing summer sun had brought to the wheat and barley fields of his peasants. Kinneret's sea level had dropped nearly a cubit, drying up the springs that watered the hillsides. He managed to find only a few green shoots in the dried mud along the ditches. King Daniel sat down in his ruined fields and he wept. "Our land is dying, and the fault is mine," he told his daughter. "The fault lies with Mot, the Lord of Death. Perhaps this year he has wounded our rainbringer beyond a quick recovery. We know that this has happened in the past. In your father's time, there were 7 years of drought and famine." "Yes, and it was because my father offended the gods. I've never told you that," he muttered. "Well, sometimes I think the gods offend us more than we offend them," she said, but not too loudly. Daniel nodded in silent agreement. "My brave daughter, there is a secret I must confide to you. Then you will understand why this is happening." So saying, he proceeded to explain her brother's divine parentage and the purpose of his sad destiny. Pugat's serene countenance clouded with sadness, and then her delicate features hardened in a fierce resolve. "I knew they were using him. I told him as much, but he never listens." Then she corrected herself. "Never listened to me. We must find him and bury him properly before this autumn equinox, if our land is ever to recover. And I have a blood price to extract from the one who killed him," she whispered, "be it man, woman, god, or goddess." In Yatpan's tent, the warlord was on his knees before his divine mistress, pleading for his life. "I was not born with a bird's claw, my lady, and in my own strong grip I would have held a bow. The lightning frightened my feathered mountain, even as it would cause a horse to rear up." Anath let out her breath in a sharp hiss as she lowered and sheathed her sword. Yatpan was not to blame.
A hot, dry wind with lightning and thunder, she muttered. I see my brother's hand in this. And yet he lies in Moat's deepest crypt. Before summer solstice laid him low, Baal must have cast a mighty spell to confound me during his yearly repose. Had it not been for Aqhat's lusting after that succubus, I doubt we could have harmed him. And it was all for nothing. You lost the bow. Yatpan rose on one knee. But you had your revenge. The goddess's anger boiled up once again. You mortal fool. They wanted me to kill their little half-godling. I see it all now. I'm to be blamed for the drought and the famine our crime has brought upon the land. The red rage that had driven her for so long finally gave way to a great sadness. Why had her own family conspired against her? Why had her younger brother, Prince Aot, whom she had so often defended and so often rescued, betrayed her? Why had O.T.A crafted a magic bow to kill her winged messengers? Where had they gotten the idea that warfare was evil? Without wars, there would be no conquests, no loot, no slaves taken, no epics sung, no histories written. Warfare was man's path to glory, and woman's path to involuntary servitude, but why should she care about them? She was the fighting man's goddess, not a consoler of wives nursing their brats and chewing their husband's sandal leather. Nor was she a patron deity for giggling girls and wiggling harlots. Anath sat down on a camel saddle in Yatpan's tent, picked up a lyre, and strummed a lament. I killed him for his bow, for his arrows laid him low. But his bow was lost to me when it fell into the sea. Now the hero may not rest until his tomb is blessed. Flesh and bone return to earth in the land that gave him birth. Or the sprouting grain will die ere the harvest time is nigh. And on the forest trail between Hazor and Quart Ablim, King Daniel and the princess were met by Prince Aqhat's two surviving companions on their way southward to bring the sad news back to Runyon. The two young men fell at the feet of their king, begging his forgiveness for failing to defend their lord. Daniel could plainly see their rent garments and festering wounds they had already inflicted upon themselves. He promised them no further punishment if they would truthfully tell him and the princess exactly what had happened. In halting speech, interspersed with recrimination, they recounted the whole tragic story, including the strange vision of the Moon Maiden that had led Prince Aqhat to the fatal ambush atop the tower. Black sorcery, King Daniel growled. Devoured between earth and sky, no grave below in which to lie, the Lady Pugat whispered. Even his final sacrifice was for naught. I will make a great offering to Prince Baal. He will help us recover Aqhat's remains, Daniel said. He won't hear you, Father. The Cloud Rider lies sleeping in the caves of Murray, a prisoner of the Dark Lord. He will not waken until equinox, if he wakens at all, she reminded him. Then I shall journey to the back of beyond and wake him myself, Daniel declared in a terrible voice that even his brave daughter dared not answer. There was nothing to be gained in entering Quart Ablim, but Daniel insisted that they come in sight of the town. And when such a vantage point had been reached, the king went up on a high place which overlooked the city of sorrows, and with his arms raised to heaven, he delivered such a curse that to this very day only snakes and scorpions inhabit